with Testimony. I'm One Handy Mallet, and today I will be speaking with Miss Shellian in reference to her unbelievable faith and prayers God answered when she received a life sentence in prison. Miss Shellian, thank you for joining us today, and I know your testimony is going to strengthen so many people's faith in the Lord's words. And with that being said, I'm so excited and I am ready to just jump on into it. Okay.
Thank you.
So could you just go ahead and just tell us a little about yourself?
Well, as you said, my name is Shellian, and I'm 68 years old. And I have 3 children, 2 girls and a son. And I have 5 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. And my mother and father, both of them are deceased. And I was raised up in a small home with just one brother and one sister, which my aunt raised my sister. So it was just me and my brother.
Okay.
And so I came from a small family, and I was born and raised in West Memphis, Arkansas. Really, I was born in a little town called Julius, Arkansas, right, not too far from Crawfordsville.
Okay.
And we ended up moving to West Memphis, Arkansas, where I was, completed my years of growing up. And so that's it. My father and mother both are deceased. My grandmothers and my aunts and uncles, all of them are deceased.
So did they were they deceased at an early age? Did they raise you, or was it that they died while you was at an early age?
No, they died while I was older.
Okay.
Like in my 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about your testimony that you're going to give us today, and I guess what I'm looking for is just tell us about your lifestyle prior to your receiving your sentence of life in prison.
Well, my life, before I ended up in prison, I lived a very riotous life. It didn't start out that way. Mm-hmm. At first, I was a really good girl, going, had me a little job, which I couldn't hold that job too much because I was in love with a man that I wanted to spy on him and see what he was doing, so I had to leave my job, and I ended up, getting fired. Right. I was working at a cleaner's, and so where it started at, I started stealing the money from the cleaners, just to help my man. And so I ended up in a terrible situation because I had a good little thing going. I had my children, had my little apartment. My mom was helping me do some things, and I ended up getting with a man that was on drugs, and that's where my dilemma started. And I thought I was so in love because I was just a teenager, and he just told me all kinds of things, wonderful things about myself that I wanted to hear, which I didn't believe that I was that wonderful, but he told me that just so he could, use me, and I fell for it, and that's where my life of tragedy began. I started falling. I started, losing my children, losing my own mind. And so when I ended up in a world of drinking and drugs and carousing, and it took me to a place where I never experienced before. And I don't never want to experience again.
Amen to that. Yeah. Okay, so during all this, and it led up to the particular incident that happened, that caused you to give you the life sentence.
Yeah.
So kind of tell us what happened in a sense of that day, and what got you to the point, or what made you so angry to the point where murder led you to be doing murder.
I said, the man that I was involved with, and really, I can't make a lot of excuses about how he treated me, because I made a choice, and I made the wrong choices, and I ended up like drinking and involved in other drugs, hard drugs, and then I ended up having dates with men. I started making little, money. I said, hey, this is some quick money. So, get with a man and he want to have sex and and give you a little money. So I said, wait, this is easy money. But little did I know it wasn't easy. It got harder and harder. And I ended up in that type of life, prostitution, gambling, drinking, and all of these things. And it ended up with me taking a man's life.
So what happened with that? I mean,
well,
what made you take his life?
What was the drive behind the motive or the drive behind you just taking a man's life? Just got you to that point. Mm-hmm. What triggered you to do that?
Well, I was an angry, bitter woman. I was angry at my friend, my boyfriend, because he was using me. When I found out that he had other women, I was angry about that because I was giving him my money. I mean, like an idiot. I was giving him my money. And I tell you, let me back up. I got pregnant when I was in school. Mm-hmm. And they put me out of school. I think that's where my anger started. Because when I was going to school back then in '68, and I got put out of school because I was pregnant, well, that angered me because I wanted to learn. I wanted to have these things. It seemed like doors was closing in my face. And that's where my anger started. It ended up in a life of crime. Mm-hmm. And, it built up to me taking a man's life. I was out there in the streets doing all kinds of robbery and things like that. And it ended up causing me to take a man's life. You can start with one little thing, drinking or smoking, and it caused me to end up taking a man's life and going to prison. But I was a very bitter, angry young woman.
So you would say jealousy kind of took over the reason why?
Well, yes.
Because you started seeing other women and things like that?
Yes, when I found out that that's what he was doing, so I guess it was more anger. I was jealous, but then it was like a hate situation. Mm. I didn't want to be with him, but I thought I was so in love, I couldn't pull myself away. Mm-hmm. Then plus I had these kids, these children, that I didn't know how to really be a mother. I was so young, and I feel like my young life had been taken away from me. I had just given it up for another man, a man. And so when I ended up in a situation where I just didn't even know how to figure out how I was going to get out of that struggle that I was in, how I was going to make ends meet, how I was going to take care of my children. So I ended up in prostitution, mm-hmm. trying to take care of my kids because I didn't feel like I was smart enough, intelligent enough to have a good job because I got kicked out of school. And it seemed like no one wanted to give me a break, And then my parents, they were unlearned, and they didn't know how to read or write. So, and they did the best that they could for me because I was raised up in a dysfunctional family. But they did the best that they could, but they were alcoholics, and so all I ever saw was violence. Right. And so it was ingrained in my mind that this is the way the life goes. This is what you got to do to survive. And so that was my survival mechanism. And I ended up taking a man's life, and he was a white man, and he was a man that was good to me. And I had been going with this man for about 4 years. Giving me money, taking care of me, helping me with my bills. He was a really good man to me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, something inside of my head, that anger, that bitterness and resentment just wouldn't go away. And it just all rolled up and took it out on him. And he lost his life because of the bitterness that I had in my heart.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that your sentence
of life was fair during those times? Because back then, a lot of racial injustice was going on, I'm pretty sure. And I guess I want to know, do you feel like you had a fair sentence? Because some people now, they get murder charges, but they not doing life.
Or get a life sentence, you know. So what's your intake on that?
Well, I tell you, the life that I lived out there, I didn't understand about whether it was fair or unfair. I was so drugged up and into my own thing, like everybody owed me something. You know, this type of life I lived, I was so angry and said, I'm gonna get mine, you owe me. And I realized as time went on, nobody owed me anything. So I didn't know whether it was fair or not, because when I got that life sentence, I took a plea bargain. So I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't even understand the prejudice that was going on at that time. Because when I got that sentence, my court-appointed attorney, that's what I had, a court-appointed attorney. And he came to me and he told me, he said, you're a black woman and you're a prostitute and you killed a white man. And he said, if you don't take this plea bargain of life and get out in 7 years. See, that was a screw up right there. He said that they're going to fry you. They're going to fry you. And so I was fearful. I was so afraid. I was just a young woman that didn't have the knowledge of the legislative and the laws. And so I just went on and said, well, okay, a life sentence with 7 years, I could get out, you know, in 7 years and be back on the streets. But little did I know, God had a plan.